So today's topic, we really want our network to be focused on improving the lives of older adults and caregivers. And the big emphasis that we have in AgeWell over the last 5 years, and the way we see it being increasingly in the coming years, is that older adults and caregivers have a significant voice within our network, that it's understanding and helping older adults and caregivers to really articulate the problems and challenges and aspirations that they have will really drive our research program. So today's topics are going to be focusing on the current experience, which is obviously everybody knows is very, very significant. So how are older adults and caregivers experiencing the COVID-19 situation? From the AgeWell perspective, what are the kinds of AgeTech solutions that are being used during the pandemic? And how can AgeTech respond to the needs of Canadians in the future? So those are topics that we're going to be looking at. So just to briefly say what we mean by AgeTech. So by AgeTech, we mean technology-based solutions that improve the lives of older adults and their caregivers. This ranges from software applications to hardware sensors, robots, and smart homes. It includes everyday technologies, the sorts of things that you can go down to a store and buy or get from Amazon. It also includes state-of-the-art technologies that are coming through, which are going to have an impact on the future. For example, the use of robots, for example. Just to give some context about today's discussion of the COVID-19 situation. If we look at the research, probably about 20 to 25% of our older adults in Canada experience some sort of social isolation. Social isolation can lead to stress, depression, cognitive decline, and can affect physical health. So this statistic here of 20 to 25% is the situation that we saw before COVID-19. During the pandemic, we don't know what this number could be, but it's likely to be much more significant under the restrictions that people have had to endure over the last few weeks. Anecdotally, many older adults, however, have started to adopt technology because of the current situation. Many people are learning to use platforms like Zoom to allow for video chat with families, etc., to keep them connected. So in the light of this, we embarked on a project to uncover some of these stories across AgeWell's 8 challenge areas, which are the foundation of our work for the next 3 years or so. So to very briefly mention what these are, we have 8 challenge areas which AgeWell is concerned with. These cover areas such as health, home, transportation, financial wellness, etc., etc. For more about these, please visit the AgeWell website link in the chat. So now I'd like to pass on to Olive, who's going to be discussing her ideas around the present situation with COVID-19.
Thank you, Andrew. As an AgeWell representative for older adults, I am pleased to be here and to share some of the lived experiences of older adults, as well as we all progress through the COVID-19 pandemic. For older adults, the experience of COVID-19 has been much like all other age groups. The only difference is that older adults are at a higher risk for severe illness if they do contract the virus. For all ages, there was an immediate social isolation. For older adults, for some older adults, this resulted in no difference. It is just a continuation of what they've been experiencing all along. So now more of us get to experience their lived realities. For other older adults, social isolation completely changed their lifestyle. They were used to being active, and to suddenly be confined to their home, they said it was like given a prison sentence. But like other age groups, older adults are resilient, and depending on their situation, their response to this challenge has been varied. For some with chronic conditions, COVID-19 has been a very distressing time. Some are not receiving the ongoing support they need to help them continue aging in place. Others are not seeking medical help when needed because they're afraid they might encounter the virus. COVID-19 has created fear, anxiety, and uncertainty among all ages, but this pandemic has also opened the door for new learnings for older adults. Some have increased their use of technology, and others have learned how to use the technology they already had. We all know those older adults who had smartphones, but never used them because they only got them in case of an emergency. Because of COVID-19, they have learned how useful their phones can be and are interested in learning more of it. For them, this pandemic is another life event that must be dealt with, and they used every means possible to learn and grow from this experience. Some older adults noted ageism being practiced. As an older adult and an advocate, I know growing old can present challenges, but growing old is not a disease. It is not wrong, but it can be an opportunity. For me, it's really motivating to be involved with the AgeWell organization, because they acknowledge that growing older can present challenges, but also know that the last 20 years of life are equally as important as the first 20 years. Now, Ron will provide an overview of the caregiver landscape.
Okay, thanks, Olive. So on my end, I'm just going to go with the natural flow here. Didn't prepare as much as you all there, so thank you on that. From the caregiver landscape, I do spend a lot of time talking with individual caregivers and a lot of caregiver groups across Canada and some also internationally. For just personally on my end, I am still caring for Mom, an older adult who lives by herself here in Toronto. So checking in on her, caregiving for another family member, my aunt and uncle who has to go for dialysis consistently. So making sure that they get their resources and supplies. And then also internationally, I do have an older adult person who cared for me when I was very little in the Philippines. So trying to support remotely and from a distance. So for me, this is not just local, this is also international, the care piece. But with the other caregivers, my take on it, one of the biggest hit caregiving communities or groups that we all already know would be those caring for someone in long-term care. There's a lot of pain points happening there. It's not going to be new for any of you. It's all on the news. There are a lot of caregivers that don't even get to be in a position of caregiving because they can't be physically there. And that's a struggle. That's one crowd. Another crowd are the caregivers that are in the community. Example for myself, I don't live with my mom, or caregivers that are not able to maybe go to their loved one, to the older adult, because they don't want to risk anything at that point. So there are a few caregivers even in our committee that don't even go visit their parents just because they're trying to make everything safe, but they're trying to find ways around it. And then there are the caregivers that are actually living with their older adult. Some of them now are living with them even longer. They're not at work. And these caregivers are actually, some of them are managing and some of them are actually struggling. So a lot of from my perspective, I always pay attention to the emotions and and a lot of the emotions that I keep hearing are fear. Low confidence is a big one. Some are dealing with anger, frustration, and within this community, the AgeWell community, and even outside of AgeWell, for those that are not part of AgeWell here, the ability to help provide hope and solutions moving forward. That's actually what a lot of caregivers are looking at. And technology as a tool is one of the ways that we hope to support the caregivers and also the older adults moving forward. So that's just a few on my end that I'd like to share of the landscape. Again, this is not new to many of you. This is, it's just actually that time where even those that were never caregivers now maybe know what it means to be a caregiver, because we're all caring for each other in some way. Okay, so that is my perspective of where we're at. Okay. So Olive, I'm going to pass this back to you. We're going to work on persona. Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to pass it on to you, Olive.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Developing the personas and scenarios. As an older adult, it's invigorating to be involved with AgeWell. Not only have researchers identified some of the challenges older adults face, but they've been working with older adults to develop technologies that help improve quality of life and prepare us to deal more successfully with growing older and the negative life events such as this pandemic. At a recent older adult and caregiver advisory committee meeting, the pandemic was of course discussed, and it was decided that as a group we could add to the knowledge and realities of the COVID-19 impact on older adults and caregivers. And to do this, we individually developed personas and scenarios related to one of the 8 challenges discussed by Andrew earlier in this presentation. In the next slide, I will illustrate what we did by describing Cordelia and her concerns about maintaining her autonomy and independence as she deals with COVID-19. So what was Cordelia's challenge? Cordelia's challenge as an active older adult is maintaining her autonomy and independence. For her, continuing daily fitness activities, part-time work, volunteering, socializing, ongoing learning activities, and her love for travel are important. But COVID-19 has impacted on all of those activities. The shutting down of the educational institutes impacted on Cordelia's part-time work and ongoing learning activities. The closing of recreation and entertainment facilities, the groups and organizations has impacted on her fitness, her socialization, and her volunteering activities. Because she is an older person with some chronic conditions, the restrictions imposed by COVID-19 are adhered to by herself, her family, and friends. So she is no longer able to stay connected in her usual way. So who is Cordelia? Cordelia is 83 years of age, widowed, lives with her daughter in a rural community in Canada. Her daughter is employed full-time, and she also has riding horses as a hobby. Thus, living in this active household and having 4 other children and their families close by, and her own lifestyle, Cordelia is provided with purpose every single day. Although she has chronic health conditions, Cordelia considers her health excellent and continues to work on a part-time basis. She enjoys socializing and working with others, is an active lifelong learner, a volunteer and an educator. She owns her own vehicle and has no driving restrictions. As a diabetic, she tries to be proactive by watching her diet and maintaining physical activity through aqua fitness classes, daily household activities, working part-time, volunteering, and travel. Cordelia does most of the cooking in the household and enjoys grocery shopping, browsing through stores, visits from children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, visiting with family and friends, dining out, going to the theater, and going for drives. So what's the scenario? As an active older adult, Cordelia is finding it difficult because she is missing social interaction with others and her part-time employment. Because of COVID-19, she's no longer able to pick up friends and go for a drive, have family and friends in for meals, a glass of wine, a chat, or just companionship. Her exercise routine is impacted because the pool is closed. Her part-time job is on hold and all social activities are shut down. Although in her professional life, Cordelia continues connection through telephone and video conferences. Her social life with family and friends is greatly curtailed. The usual family and friends events are restricted. Family members visit through the glass patio doors and items get exchanged by being left on the back deck. For Cordelia, technology supports her challenges related to her professional life, but her lack of autonomy and independence due to COVID-19 imposed restrictions, which have greatly reduced her impact on personal life and social life. Her inability to connect face-to-face with family and friends and to continue her exercise regime is a major challenge, as is the personal touch, such as the hugs we all love to get. So what might be the solution? Although new technology can support older adults to remain connected to family and friends or other aspects of life, they are not working for everyone. Some older adults need more encouragement to learn about and use technology that could enhance their quality of life. For some older adults, the possibilities of using technology has been a foreign concept. Barriers to involvement are varied, from their lack of confidence in their own ability to use technology, their financial restraints, or lack of training and tech support services. Therefore, helping older adults build on their own capabilities by increasing their capacity to adapt and use technology is as important as technologies that are user-friendly and accessible. That's it.
Thanks, Olive. Sorry, I'm just switching the slides here. Yeah. So thanks for that persona. Olive provided one persona, and we have a whole bunch. Persona that I'm going to share here is of an older adult, also as well as caregiver. But for here we have Mary. And before I continue, actually, the challenge sets that this could address is challenge set number 4 and number 5 in AgeWell's 8 challenge sets there. Number 4 being cognitive health and dementia, and number 5, mobility and transportation. So we have Mary, and this is actually a real life example that I'm connected to. A 71-year-old retiree. She lives by herself in an apartment in Toronto, in the suburbs, so not in the city downtown, but more in the suburbs. So transportation can be a challenge. Public transportation or a vehicle may be required. Walking is possible, but it's a little bit further sometimes. A mother of 2 adult sons, and the 2 children both have families themselves. So they each have kids and a partner. Mary, she loves to attend church pre-COVID, before COVID, going to church and going to the grocery store that she could walk to, which is about a 10-minute walk, so it's doable, but that becomes a barrier now, just simply not getting there, but actually going in to the grocery. And she's also been experiencing some MCI, mild cognitive impairment, with possibly, they're currently doing some tests whether she has Alzheimer's and dementia there. So with Mary, very simple life. It's nothing fancy for her. It's really, she likes to stay at home. She likes to watch her TV. But the challenge is getting supplies to her, okay, getting her food, and again, that social interaction that she would get at church and with her church friends. Sometimes they would go out for coffee. Right now, since COVID, she has not left her home. So that has been, I don't know, whatever, 2 months, give or take. So she has been stuck at her apartment and she's dealing with fear. So again, I always come back to the emotions. For me, that's one of my big ways that I could tell how people are doing. And a lot of it is dealing with fear, concerns about accessing supplies, getting the supplies to her. And the concern is her two sons, they do live a little bit further. They're like 30 minutes to an hour away. Again, one of them actually chose that he does not want to go risk visiting his mom, and he also has a newborn baby. So you're dealing with the caregiver here that's debating that, you know what, I'm putting my family at risk on both sides. So just that whole piece, he's staying at home. The older son is coming by and dropping off food every once or two times a week. So that is the situation in their family. But the concern is that mom is, or Mary here, is not consistently, let's say, taking her medication, okay? So medication adherence is a concern by the sons and even by Mary. Using maybe a pill machine, actually, they were able to find some technology to help. Another solution is, and it's not for everyone, but something I personally did as well, is I would have a video camera in a safe area in the home so that I could communicate, and it would have a video screen. Right now they're using an Alexa show that can automatically answer, okay, so that mom doesn't have to touch the technology. Just as Olive said, it's not simply about just bringing in technology. The solutions that we're all solving for is not just here, let's give someone a device, okay? It's not as easy as that. We got to deal with cost, we're dealing with policy, we're dealing with privacy, ethical challenges, learning, all those things. So those are, I'll mention a few, but there's so many that we all have to work on. But that is the situation here, and it's something that that Mary and her sons are working with. But when it comes to transportation, that is the big one right now. They're not even comfortable with the current ride-sharing systems that are out there. It's just something they're not feeling safe with. So that's something that we need to be solving for, and technology has a role somewhere there. Again, it's not all about technology, but it does play a role. Okay, so that's persona number 2 that we have, and we have many personas that you'll be able to learn more about in the coming future here. Okay. So we're going to pass it over to Alex here.
Great. Thanks very much, Ron and Olive, for those personas and scenarios. I think those are really, really helpful examples of some of the issues that older people and their caregivers are facing each and every day. And I think they probably hit home for many of us. I know, the examples that Ron was given as a caregiver, I very much face those challenges every day as well in my own household. So as Ron mentioned, we have many more of these personas and scenarios as well. So feel free to reach out to us. So in terms of finding solutions to these and many other problems we're starting to see bubble to the surface these days, technology obviously can play a role. And I think right now we can all imagine various technological solutions that can help to solve some of the issues that were just raised in these 2 past examples. The problem is we can't wait for new technologies to be developed. This is not the same scenario of, waiting a year for vaccination to be developed for COVID, etc. Older people and caregivers need solutions, and they need those solutions right now. And so to sit around and say, okay, let's fund a brand new project that'll develop some technologies that will support older people and their caregivers during COVID and the post-pandemic time just is not going to work. So what AgeWell is doing right now is we're trying to find these solutions as quickly as we can. And part of this is actually going through what AgeWell has done over the past 5+ years and looking at all the technologies that have been developed thus far, all the startups that we've supported and all the companies we've supported, and trying to see, well, what types of technology and solutions already exist that we can quickly take and perhaps pivot to support older people and their caregivers during these unusual times that we're currently living in. Now, when we're looking at the different solutions, we're looking at right from the high-tech solutions, so the robotics, the online platforms, etc. And you see a couple of pictures on this slide here. But we're also looking at the no-tech solutions. And what are some examples of no-tech? Well, these are the changes in policy that may be required, or the changes in service delivery. Service delivery is a big thing these days, obviously, that we need to take in consideration. And so AgeWell is also looking at that aspect as well. And our philosophy is, you're not going to have a good solution unless you look at the technology, the policy, and the service delivery all at the same time. Next slide, please, Ron. So challenges and opportunities. There's a lot of challenges these days, and I think we're all facing them, whether technological or not. In terms of the AgeWell network and our research projects, there are some significant implications. First of all, and first and foremost, is now, if not any time previously, it's more important than ever to listen to the older adults and the caregivers to understand what they're going through currently right now in this pandemic phase, and what kind of solutions they want to see. However, AgeWell also needs to be very careful. We are not a funded network that looks at COVID-19. We are not a pandemic network like is being funded right now in some other locations and some other places across Canada and the world. So we want to make sure that while we are trying to help solve some of the issues that older people and their caregivers are facing because of COVID, we want to make sure that that's not all we're talking about, that we also look at the opportunity for the future as well. And from an AgeWell perspective, we also need to be understanding, and I think also very focused on, what does post-pandemic life look like for older adults and caregivers as well, because this is not just something that's going to currently happen right now and then disappear miraculously, as some people and our friends south of the border tend to think and say sometimes in the news. So what is that going to look like, and how can technology play a role there? So in terms of lessons learned for the AgeTech sector, and primarily industry, they need to continue to understand that older adults do want technological solutions, as Andrew pointed out at the beginning of this talk. They need to understand, though, that again, the older adult marketplace was very difficult and heterogeneous before this all happened, and most likely even more so now. And finally, I think what companies are learning very quickly, and many of our startups, is the ability to pivot very fast. That in order to continue to supply the demand for their solutions, they need to understand the context that they're living in and the world we're living in, and pivot as necessary. So finally, in terms of the next steps for AgeWell and our partners, well, we need to continue to do what we've been funded for, and that is provide technological solutions for our stakeholders. However, because of everything that's going on, we need to also continue to refine what our legacy will be. That is, what are we going to leave behind at the end of the day? What are we going to be known for? I think most of us within the network office knew or understood what our legacy would be. However, that's already changed. And so we need to sit down because of current times and rethink that as well. And finally, in terms of next steps, is we need to all start to think about post-NCE life. Once we're no longer an NCE, AgeWell is not going to disappear. We're going to continue to be active as much as possible, but what does that look like, and how are we going to continue to do that? And that's very much on our radars moving forward. Ron, I'll hand it back to you, and you can go on to the next slide.
Okay, thank you there, Alex. Olive, this is for you and me here. Olive, what do we have here?
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Certainly, this webinar has been a great opportunity to learn from each other. As they say about supporting families with children, it takes a village. Well, I think when it comes to supporting older adults, it takes researchers, developers, adequate training, and the wisdom of the older adults themselves to create solutions. We need to promote technology and its benefits socially and intellectually. As older adults learn about technology and how it can be used for their personal benefit, it becomes more exciting. Technology cannot solve all challenges, but can enhance social connections with visuals such as FaceTime, Skype, or Zoom. There are many technologies out there to support older adults wishing to age in their own home, and of course, more to be developed. But these challenges and barriers to make this happen, there are challenges and barriers to make this happen, but it is possible. So on to you, Ron.
Okay. So my closing remarks is technology does not operate in isolation. I always say that technology is just a tool, like a hammer. It's not the hammer that you're going for, it's what that hammer provides. And that is something we have to look at. Developing these tools within AgeWell and even outside of AgeWell, supporting those tools, supporting policy. I'm already jumping in one of these Q&As here. How do we even get access to the technology, okay, for the older adults and caregivers? You know, AgeWell has a policy team that's doing a lot of work in this space, and that is some of the biggest challenges. How do we get just even tools to some people, even simple internet? Okay, everyone here that's making it on the call is here because of having access to the internet, but there are many that still do not have access. So how do we even provide that or get that to them? For me, it's about simplifying it, keeping it simple, the KISS principle always. Great technology, you don't even notice, okay, it's there, but you don't really notice. So that's the work that we need to do. We're at a time now where we are moving faster. That all the challenges we were dealing with, those that have been in the community pre-COVID doing work for older adults and caregivers already knew all these barriers and challenges. Now many more are aware of it, and it's just our time that we need to kind of show off the work that we're doing, tell the stories, promote it much more, and get it into the hands of, again, the people that need it. So again, other older adults and caregivers. So that is my closing remarks. So thank you there. What I just wanted to share here is for those that are new here, I know that there are many that are already involved with AgeWell, but there are many here that are new. You can join the AgeWell community here. There's a link there. If you don't want to write that down, just remember AgeWell nce.ca, and then you'll see a join link there. What you could do being involved, you could be part of a research project. For those that are the HQPs here, for the researchers, please really make sure that your projects moving forward do involve older adults and caregivers, which you have already done, but find other ways to have them involved, you know, throughout the process. And again, for those that are new, you can be involved at the local level or even at the national level. You can be providing feedback on relevant research proposals and even stuff that have already been done. Okay, sometimes it's not about just acknowledging something and liking it. You can also say what we shouldn't be pursuing as well. Okay, that's quite important. And also sharing your experiences and your perspectives at network events. This year, there is no AgeWell conference that's going to take place live in person. That was supposed to be in Saskatchewan, so that'll happen in a couple of years again, but there are many other ways that we'll be able to be involved. Sometimes, hopefully post-COVID, you know, we'll be able to still get into groups at local levels and break bread, have a meal, and chat with fellow AgeWell community members. Okay, so that's out there. Oh, other ways you could get involved, just finish up. Oh, Olive, I'll pass this back to you. Yeah.
Well, I think There is a little bit of time for questions and answers if anybody, I'm not sure who's monitoring that, but if there are questions, we'd welcome them.
Thanks, Olive. I think it's myself and Andrew that are going to moderate the questions for the next few minutes. So we do
Yes.
have questions that are typed into the Q&A box, so feel free to keep typing those in, and we'll just kind of go through them and answer them, as many of them as we can. Any questions that are not answered at this point, we will take the time and the effort to try to respond to you in some way if we have your contact information moving forward. So I'll start my video so you guys can see that I am honestly trying to answer these questions. So the first question is from Mary, and the question is, are there any indication of what happens after 3 years? So maybe I can answer this one, and I think I hit the answer live part. So as I mentioned, Mary, yes, we're already starting to think about what that's going to look like. And some of the possibilities are things such as becoming a research institute within our host institution, becoming our own standalone organization, or perhaps ongoing funding from the federal government. So things are very wide open right now, but it is something we're working on quite regularly at this point. I think it's the things that probably keep me and Andrew up most nights going forward here. Next question from Simon Cheeseman, and maybe Andrew, you'll answer this question. I'll read it out for you. Wondering about your takes on the use of monitoring technology by family caregivers in clinical environments, such as hospitals and long-term care facilities during this period when they can't visit. And what about continued use after? Andrew?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. One of the really important things that I've learned in the last few weeks was something that Olive said to me, because I started using the word, or we hear a lot about the phrase vulnerable older adults, right? Is that the narrative around all this is particularly about older adults being at risk, being vulnerable to COVID-19 and infection. And clearly the health and safety of people is of prime importance. However, I think we've got to be very careful about how we use technology, because it's, you know, using technology isn't just about the very specific things around, well, monitoring the health of people, making sure that they're all right. There are a lot of things around privacy, how the technology is implemented. So it's actually going to be a very, very interesting learning process over the next few the next months and years after we come out of the COVID-19 situation, hopefully, and really highlight some of the ethical issues around the use of technology. So on the one hand, technology, it can be a really, really important tool, you know, to monitor people, to keep connected with people. But on the other hand, it's got to be done in an appropriate way that doesn't disempower people. Olive might want to mention something around that.
So actually, we will move on to the next question, just because we have many questions posted. But I will be fielding the questions out to various people on the panel. And this one's actually, I'm going to hand over to Ron to answer. If time permits, would you discuss some of the advantages of and limitations of Alexa? And
okay, so if anyone has Alexa on, I'm going to be saying it on, and I know it's going on for some people when I say that. But so the beauty for Alexa, I'm a fan of it. Here's an example of one right now. Okay, you can see right there is that for the return on investment for something that's less than $100, is that I could do a video chat, okay, with my mom, and she doesn't have to answer. Okay, but there has to be a trust relationship. Music. Okay, I could control and I could just play a song connected to Spotify. And then you can ask all the other questions, but the biggest one is the communication piece that I'm gonna throw out, and music. Those are the top two that I use it for. High return for low cost.
great, thank you, Ron. I'm going to jump around here. This next question I'm going to field out to Olive, actually. It's from Vicky K. The question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge ahead for engaging older adults and caregivers in research in the age of COVID? What can researchers do to make participation more accessible?
I think researchers need to reach out to the older adults. They, it's new in the research field to be bringing older adults into the research. It's having to let go of some of your ideas. But for those who have tried it, it has really worked. And I think we learn so much from the older adults, but also the older adults learn so much from the researchers and the others who are working.
Just quickly chime in, Alex, on my end. Just find a way to make it simpler. Right now, the only method really is through either phone or a video tool. Doesn't meet everybody. You won't access all the caregivers and older adults that don't have technology, but find ways to make it simple. Okay. Great.
Next question from Sandra McLeod. I'm actually going to ask Olive and Ron to quickly comment on. The question is, how much is income a barrier for some older adults, and I'm going to add caregivers in there as well, in terms of adopting technology? Have low-income seniors been left further behind in the world of COVID-19? Olive, do you want to start off with that?
Yes, low-income seniors have been left behind, the same as all segments of the population who are struggling to live. Their incomes are not enough to keep them in food and a roof over their head, so they are missing out. And I think we need to find a way to bring everyone into the field of technology. It's the future, and we are expected to use technology, but we're not provided with the equipment we need or the training or the backup service that are needed.
And my quick answer is that technology creates unfairness. That's my big statement, is that the haves and the have-nots. It needs to be more fair. To me, the day that technology will be fair when it comes to cost is when technology is like the plumbing system. If anyone has seen my presentation, plumbing and water is not even fair right now. Some places don't get it, but for the most part, we all have it. Okay, and it's like a necessity. We need to get to that stage, and the answer is it's not. Technology actually creates unfairness, in my opinion.
Great. Next question. Maybe I'll have Andrew comment on this. This is from Kathy. The question is, with the development of the Long-Term Care Commission, will AgeWell be a part of that?
Well, I think AgeWell should be contributing to anything relating to long-term care. Over the last few weeks, we've seen that COVID-19 has really highlighted some of the deep fissures that exist within our society. Long-term care has been a problem that has been around for many, many years. And I think we should be contributing to the discussion around long-term care. How can technology make it better? How can we make sure that it's better run and regulated? How can we contribute to a better quality of life in long-term care? How can we use technology in particular to keep people as long as possible within the community? So we should definitely be contributing to that.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And unfortunately, the last question we're going to take today is from Heyman. And actually, I'm going to allow every panelist give a quick 30-second answer to this question. Have you seen any issue with technology making our elders feel more distant or less loved, even if it seems we are more connected? Olive?
I think technology can help older adults stay connected. And I think we really need to pursue it and work with older adults to use it.
Ron?
So my answer is yes. It's not for everybody, but it does help those that are able to embrace it and utilize it, but it's not for everybody. if you don't have the proper team, I'm always a fan of creating a technology team. It should be part of your health team, in my opinion, a tech supporter. It may be a challenge for some older adults. So that's, yeah.
You're on. Andrew?
Yeah, what we are seeing, I think, is a lot of people starting to use technology in ways that they may not have done before. This really speaks to the idea that older people are able to adapt, able to take up new things. We shouldn't have a stereotypical vision of what older adults are. There are a lot of potential here.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And my final comment to that question, I think overall is, it's really important that we develop technologies that allow me to call my mom, not as my patient, but calling my mom as my mom. And, once we develop technology solutions for that, then I think we're on the right track. So finally, thank you very much, everyone, for being part of this webinar and our panelists. You're all great. Join us for our next one on